All right, hello again, everyone. It looks like a good amount of people are logged in now. So without further ado, Zachary is going to get us started. Off to you, Zachary.
All right, thank you, Kim. So as Kim mentioned, I'm Zachary Griggs, and I'm going to take you through the webinar today. The title of the webinar is Vena Workflows and Process Management. Just a little bit about JMT for those of you that don't know us. Been around for about 28, 29 years, closing in on 30, and through that entire existence as a company, we've only ever worked with nonprofit organizations. So a lot of the various webinars and the products that we work with, the services we provide, everything that we do has the nonprofit space in mind. It is the thing that we focus on in all of our interactions with our clients. We're also an independent company, so that means that we're not tied to any specific publisher, and we always make our recommendations to our nonprofit clients and prospects with what the best option is for them in the market space. So if there are things that a publisher comes onto the market and they bring something to the table that is some new functionality that works better, let's say it's a better workflow tool than what we'd look at today, that's something that JMT is actively and always evaluating, and we always like to make the best recommendation to the clients that we work with based on that. Some housekeeping notes. If you have any questions, there should be a question box through the webinar tool. You just want to send those in. You can send them in as soon as they come to mind. Feel free. Kim's going to keep an eye on that. And then towards the end of the webinar, I'll leave a couple minutes. Today's webinar is going to take roughly 30 minutes to go through, and I'll leave a few minutes at the end to make sure that we get to those questions. In the event that we don't get through all of the questions, we'll send out in the follow-up the responses to those specific questions that we missed, along with a recording of the webinar and also this slide deck that you're seeing here. A little bit about myself. So I've been with JMT for just over 8 years at this point, and I'm the practice director, and I focus exclusively on FP&A. So budgeting, reporting, any FP&A function within our nonprofit space is something that I cover and I focus exclusively on in my current role. Previous to my role as the practice director, I was director of finance here at JMT. So I've also been the customer. I've been on the other side of the table. I've leveraged let's say an Excel-based budget creation process. I've had a team of multiple staff that I've run into a lot of the struggles that we're going to take a look at that Vena really addresses using their workflow tool. And I always like to factor that into everything that I walk through when it comes to the product or any presentation. I've also worked with numerous other solutions down there that you might recognize. So what we're going to do today is go over a very high level, 40,000-foot view of Vena and what it is as a company, as a product. And then we're going to get into developing a plan and specifically around the creation of a board-approved budget in a nonprofit context. We're going to go through exactly what that would look like and how Vena would be able to handle that and make that a more efficient and easy-to-use process in the future. We're also going to take a look at how you can keep an eye on, assuming you have a staff of multiple individuals that are involved in that budget creation process. We're going to walk through how you can gain visibility as a manager into how far along they are. If you think of a standard process that you don't have a dedicated workflow tool, sometimes that takes a month, could take 2 months to go in and create that board-approved budget. And at times it could be a bit of a black box where you can't see exactly who's working on what and when, how far along are you. And I'm going to show you how Vena can address some of those current friction points that might come up. And then I'm going to finish up with what I like to call going beyond just the budgeting within Vena. And so most of today we're going to focus on the creation of that board-approved budget, but I'm also going to show you how you can leverage this workflow tool beyond just budgeting. You can use it for other functions, both financial and non-financial functions within your organization. So this is just a NASCAR slide of some of the clients that Vena has. And you'll notice on here that they range in size and in function. You have some very large clients such as Nike, Arizona Cardinals, and you have some large nonprofits also listed on here as well. And I always like to make the point when it comes to Vena as a product, as a publisher, that it works for all shapes and sizes, all corporations, for-profit, nonprofit. It's an extremely flexible product, and it has a tremendous offering as far as its functionality. Specifically today, we're going to look at the workflow and process management, but beyond that, it can also, it's a very robust reporting tool, budgeting tool. You can use it for project management. So really, the sky's the limit within the tool. And currently, they have about 800 clients, customers, and they were founded in 2011 and based out of Toronto. We've been working with them. We're closing in on 2 years now that we've been a partner with Vena. A little bit of an overview for Vena. So it's a cloud-based solution. That means anywhere in the world that you have internet connection, you can simply log in and gain access to everything that you have enabled within the system. So that can include reports, your budget templates, your status tracker to keep an eye on your team and how far along they are. You can do approvals from your phone. So you have a lot of capabilities from anywhere that you have an internet connection because of the cloud-based nature of the product. What's unique about Vena and really drew JMT to work with them is the fact that it also leverages Excel as the front end. And what I mean by that is you think of the database. It lives in the cloud. That's where all your data is. But to get into that data, the window into that database is based out of Excel-built templates and reports. So you can always go into your local Excel and gain access to all of that data from your laptop. And because it's leveraging Excel on that front end, what we see with many of our clients is a very high end-user adoption rate. Because I always tell anybody that's looking at Vena for the first time that if you know Excel, which just about everybody that works in a finance role does in this day and age, you know about 70% of the content it takes to be up and running within Vena. And then you just need to learn a little bit more as far as what the Vena buttons do, but ultimately, you're already ahead of the game by being comfortable within Excel and also the other Microsoft products. So Word, PowerPoint, et cetera, it also integrates with them. And if you're comfortable with that, you don't have to give up those tools. They're very powerful tools. They're tools we all know, but Vena enables it to be more of a collaborative functionality behind the scenes between those different sheets or files. It also plays very nicely with other solutions that are out there. So depending on whichever your ERP is, your HRS system, your CRM, if you have a project management tool or an asset management tool, all of those can be integrated with Vena to be able to get all the info into one place, into one consolidated view. So as far as managing processes, you can have both financial and non-financial processes going on at the same time within the tool because you're feeding in the data from all these different sources. To go along with that, it also makes it very easy to generate reports. So if you wanted to run some board-ready reports that include some financial and some non-financial data in one place, normally you'd have to go and log into multiple places and then key in the information into an Excel sheet to get it all into one layout that you want to present. Vena does that for you because you're already loading in from those various sources. It's going to consolidate it and allow you at a click of a button to run those board-ready reports. So you don't need to spend your time moving around the numbers, doing those manual tasks and reconciling. Instead, you get to spend your time on those higher value tasks where you're going in and analyzing what it's telling you and putting together a strong presentation. And of course, it has market-leading workflow capabilities, and that's what we're going to take a look at today. Once you see the workflow tool today, a lot of that is hard to find in other solutions that are offered into the market in the FP&A space. So this was a big piece of why JMT partnered with Vena, this concept of managing your workflows, managing your teams to make the process of creating, let's say, a board-approved budget in a more efficient manner. But it could also apply to if you're doing monthly projections, month-end close, things like that. It also helps you, enables you to be more efficient in those areas. And one thing that it lays on top of Excel is the robust audit trail. In an Excel-based process or a process where you don't have a dedicated workflow tool, it's very difficult to trace back who submitted what, who's been working on what, why did this number change. Vena allows you to have an audit trail through and through. All aspects of the system, you can always keep an eye on who's been changing things, who's been in the system and modified anything. So it gives that manager quite a bit more visibility. All right. So now I'm going to take you into a live demonstration within the product. I'm going to hop over here. I'm in Google Chrome. You can use any of the popular browsers. So once I log into the system here, this is the manager view that we're first going to take a look at. I have quite a few processes, and I'm organizing them just in folders. Like I said, today we're going to focus on nonprofit, and we're going to create a budget. So once I go into this screen, what we're looking at is what's called the designer. And this is where you get to the first step in making any workflow tool work for you is going to be mapping out the ideal state of what you want it to look like, figuring out what are the different tasks, who are the different staff, what are the different due dates that I want at play. This tool allows your managers, which could be, it could be a CFO in here, director of finance, anyone who's managing a team across one of these workflows or processes is able to come in here, and this is all drag and drop and custom built, so you can come in and add these boxes essentially resemble tasks that need to take place to get you from your start to your end, your board-approved budget over here. So just to go through this, if we go over here to the start, this green start, these are little arrows that point to each task in the workflow in the order that they should be happening. So if we come over here, the first thing that needs to happen is there is a pre-budget meeting. We want to set expectations. We want to connect with our department heads maybe. We're going to have an external conversation that we're going to go over a few things. So you're able to also flag different tasks, and you can assign a due date to that where you want to make sure to have that meeting. It could be one, you can break it out by your departments, but you're also able to track these these action items that are external from Vena if you'd like within the workflow. We keep going along, we get to this input task. And this one is called the input of drivers and assumptions. So at this stage is where you'd be able to put in, let's say your finance team, they need to populate some updated rates related to some premiums, or you have some new tax rates. You're able to make sure that those get entered before anything else happens. Because of this workflow and how this comes prior to the input by your various departments and programs and before your personnel, this ensures that when it makes it up to that next stage in the workflow, that they have accurate data, that those steps have happened prior. Another example that I've seen with a lot of clients is you can make sure that you're loading actuals prior to them getting in the system. You want them to see the latest and greatest in their reports, or if you want to give them access to some year-to-date reporting, you'd be able to make sure that that happens before they're logging in at this stage later in the game. If I click on this, if I just double-click on that, it gives me some more options, some more detail within that specific task. Each task has their own set of details related to it. So we're specifically talking about the input of drivers and assumptions. In here, you have an owner of the task. And your owners, I usually recommend having one, maybe two individuals. Those are the people that are responsible for making sure that that progresses. If we were thinking of like the finance department, you might have your department head, specific program directors. You'd have the owner be that individual that you want to be able to go to and have a conversation with that'll be able to bring you up to speed on anything that's going on within that function. You can also have support workers. So if we use the example of, let's say, the finance department, you might have some additional staff in there, maybe a team of 3 or 4 staff that you want to contribute to this process, so they're responsible as well to putting in some data. Those would be support workers. They can't submit the content. It's still coming from, let's say, the director of finance, but the support workers can also contribute through the workflow. And then you can have some watchers or viewers within the process as well. And that's exactly what they are. They can look at it, what's going on, but they can't modify anything. And those might be some execs or some outside parties that are just keeping an eye on how things are progressing. In addition to that, you have the ability to put in some instructions. So within this task, you want to give some context to your staff. So if I'm the director of finance, I want to let my team know, here are the things that I want to make sure that they do in the process. So that when they go into the system, and I'll show you what the contributor view looks like shortly, once they go in the system, they're going to see this. And this is specific to that task. So a different task would have different notes from a different person. You can also attach supporting documentations. So the concept here with the Vena workflow is that it's a one-stop shop for everybody that needs to be involved in the process. They go to one place and they get everything that they need. That's the best way to make that workflow more efficient, make that process more efficient. So within here, we have the ability to put in, you can put in contracts, step-by-step instructions. If you have some historical reports that you want to make available, you're able to attach all of those documents so that when that end user accesses the system, they can easily get to everything that they need. No need to go into an Excel or go into a shared drive and track down some old files. No need to go into your inbox and try to search for old files. It's all in one place. Makes it nice and easy for them. What you also have down here is this task form section. And the task forms are the various templates that apply. In this case, we're looking at drivers. So this will have a specific template that's laid out and formatted so that when the finance team goes in to put in their drivers, this makes sense to them. If I close this real quick and I go over here to personnel, you'll notice that personnel has a personnel dedicated template, which is going to look very different than the drivers. The personnel might have your staff laid out, so you're able to get a tremendous amount of flexibility between the formatting of each of these departments and data collection points. This can apply across financial functions, but also if your program staff have different projects that they budget in different ways, or you want to have different reports available to them, you have the ability to go in there and create specific templates that are laid out in the way that makes sense for them. And all of this facilitates that high end user adoption, because we're not only giving more control to the manager, but we're also making it much more user-friendly for those end users that are in the system. They're able to get everything they need in one place, and they can still enjoy the use of Excel that they're used to, and also enjoy the formatting and custom build around their specific function at the organization. If we go back up here, there's one other item that I skipped over, and that's this here. You're able to assign due dates to each of the individual tasks. And if I click on this, there's a few options. You can choose a date. You can say, I want this to be due by this specific day, and you're able to set these up so each task you're ensuring that overall you're going to hit your large deadline where you need your board-approved budget complete by. So you can break down how much time you want to allow at each stage. So you can choose the date, even down to the time here, specific minute of the day, or you can put a smart date. The smart date is where it allows you to say, I want this person to have 3 days, but I want them to have 3 days after that task starts. So if I look here, you'll see that the driver needs to be submitted before the personnel content can be entered. So if my finance team takes a little bit longer to complete this stage, it's not going to allow the next stage to start, but it's also not going to cut them short. They still will have the full 3 days to complete putting in their personnel and HR data. So you can use those smart dates to always keep on rolling it forward and ensure that you're giving everybody ample time. So once we close that, I'm going to take a look at this next box here, just a light green color. It says exec approval on it. And this is where you're able to put in some approvals within the system as well. So these are input boxes. So you simply have somebody go in, let's say your HR manager submits your roster, your updated personnel for the period. Once that submit has taken place, it's going to flow through to an exec that's responsible for reviewing the content. And they're going to receive a notification right out of the system. And I can show you what that looks like. So right here, once the process starts, the email is going to look just like this. It's going to notify all the users that we've assigned are going to get this email that says, let's get started. The process is in play. And then after that, you're going to have this notification, which is telling those individuals, and you can see some instructions down here similar to what we saw before. It's informing those users that they have a task that they're responsible for. And all of this is Vena generated. So as soon as you turn this on and enable this, it's going to start to notify all of the staff that are involved. So it helps that communication between all the different steps also be as efficient as possible. Once you keep moving along, this is where you get notified if something was submitted. Let's say HR director goes in and they submit their roster, their personnel. This email is going to go in and it's going to let them know that it was accepted. And then the next thing that goes out is they're going to have the notification to the approver. So the approver is going to receive this email that lets them know, you can see it has some instructions down here, that something is pending their approval. So we're minimizing the amount of time between each one of these actions to make sure that your workflow continues to move forward as quickly as possible, and you have a record of when things were submitted, when things were approved or rejected as they go through that workflow. Let's hop back over here. The exec approval, if I go into this box, functions a very similar way. You can add additional reports. So if you wanted to have your approver look at a more holistic or macro level, whereas looking across multiple departments or programs, you could set up a specific report layout for them so they can do that. And then you can have a dedicated due date and who is responsible for those different items. And down here, all of these boxes function very similar. And you can see you can get very creative with as far as how the data flows. This is a relatively simplistic model when it comes to budget creation. So you can make these as granular or as summary as you feel comfortable. I always recommend within the workflow, if it's your first time mapping out that workflow, that you make it relatively straightforward. And then each time you go through that phase, let's say you're doing a reprojection every month, each time you go through that, maybe you add more users, you add more tasks, but you're able to change that and have it scale with your organization and the complexities that might come up. So once we've created this, so we've designed what we want our workflow to look like, we have these 3 buttons up top, kind of looks like the front of a VCR. We have a play button, a pause button, and a reset button. Once we've designed it, we're happy with our users. We've assigned all the users and templates that we need to each task. The due dates are updated. As soon as you're done with that, you just simply hit that play button right here. And what that's going to do is fire off that first email, that notification email that it's time to get started. It's also going to let them know if they have a task that they're responsible for at the time. You can also pause if you need to. Say, for instance, that somebody's on vacation and you need to pause and then change who's responsible for that. You can hit the pause button and then put it back in play. And at any time you need to reset it from month to month, you want to use the same process over and over again, you can easily do that as well. Okay. So we've talked about the manager and design view quite a bit. Let's look at what the contributor side looks like. And I'm just hitting the tab up top here. And your contributor users, they'll only have this tab. They'll have visibility into what you see on the screen currently, which is going to be essentially a to-do list. Up top in that blue section, you have visibility into what are the specific tasks that I'm responsible for currently, that I can work on, that I can go into the system and begin working on. The coming soon section is the area where I have some items that are not quite ready for me to work on, but they should be on my radar. I should plan my schedule around taking care of those in the near future, but I can't yet work on them. And then in the view only section, we have two different things, one of which is our financial and operational reports. So any dashboards, program reports, any, you can also have financial statements in there, board reports. All of that is in this link right here. And so that means that the end user can go into this workflow tool, go in to see what their current tasks are, and they can run the reports that they need to look at the history, to look at where they currently are, look at what somebody else has submitted. It's all in one place, that one-stop shop. The other thing in the view only is also anything you previously submitted. So let's say I go in here and I go to my input drivers and assumptions. You'll see I have my instructions that we saw before. I can download my supporting documents. And down here I have access to the template I'm supposed to be working on. I also can come in here and leave some comments. So say that I'm in finance and I'm working with 3 or 4 other staff. I can leave some notes so that when they go into the system, it's going to have a list here. And I'll show you what that looks like. It's going to have a running list of exactly who the user was when they added it, so it's a running dialogue related to this task. So you're opening up that communication and keeping a record of it between multiple staff that are working in the same area, the same department or program or project. You can also add files. So if you have some analysis that you did externally, you have a new contract, you can simply attach that right here, and then any of those other users can access it and download the file from their end as well, all associated with this task. But say that we've gone in, we've input our drivers. On this webinar today, we're not going to get into what the templates look like. So we're going to assume that we're done. We've gone in, we've checked this out, we've input our data, now we're ready to submit it. So once I hit that submit button, what's going to happen is it's going to tell me that I need to refresh my to-do list. And you'll notice, if I close that out, my input drivers and assumptions is now in the view only section. So I always have the ability to go back and take a look at anything that I previously submitted. There's no need to trace back old emails or find old files. It's always in this one place within Vena. And I can open this as many times as I'd like to just take a look at what's previously submitted. Because if you have maybe a month and a half process, you might forget or need a refresher as far as what was submitted 2 or 3 weeks ago. Once we did that, our to-do list in the blue, that got a bit longer. We got quite a few more things that opened up for us. In this demo system, there's numerous items that this user is responsible for, but you'll notice that these moved from the coming soon into the to-do section. Let's take a look at the personnel input. So once we get in here, now you'll see here's our personnel template, different than our driver input template because we're working on something different within the system. And we can also see our specific instructions. In this case, it's letting us know we're opening up a new office, so we should be mindful of that with our staffing. We have our supporting documentation. We can download these any number of times. And now what we can do is submit this one. And you'll see the difference here, though, is with the drivers, it moved us to the next stage. When it comes to the personnel input, if you recall, there was an approval in place. And this is letting us know that it's been submitted. It's going to track when it was submitted to the date, and it's going to also let us know that it's still in review. I'm going to close this. I'm going to hit refresh. For the sake of this demo, I simply have the approver as the same user as the submitter. But if we go into here, you'll see that now I have that exec approval showing up. And once I open that, you'll see this looks slightly different. I still have my instructions, my supporting documents, and I can access the reports and templates. I can even leave comments if there's multiple execs involved. But I have my approve and reject. And I would have received an email notification that lets me know that this is ready to approve. So as soon as I receive that, I can come in here and I can simply approve or reject after I've reviewed it. If we reject, you have the ability to keep a record of why it was rejected. And keep in mind, this is specific to that, in this case, just personnel submission. So you're able to call out and say, okay, please reconsider these staffing numbers and then resubmit. We're not going to do that in this case, and you can hit approve. As soon as you do that, it has now flown through that workflow and is up at that next stage. And you'll notice here that it has a little green check mark that's telling us that that has been approved, it's checked off, but I can always go back and look at it. I always have the ability to look at the history, so it gives a tremendous amount of visibility for those end users. So a few other things that we can take a look at here is we have this My Status option in the upper right. Once I click on that, in this case, there's only a few tasks that have been submitted in this process, but if you have a more robust and longer workflow, you're going to see a lot more going on here over a longer period. But it keeps track of how many different tasks you can see here by the key are overdue, and you can hover over these to get a number of each as well. How many are in the coming soon, how many you've completed, and so on. So you have visibility as like a little bit of a scorecard as far as all your different tasks. And if you have numerous processes in place, for instance, let's say you're doing the month-end close, but you're also doing some budget prep, you'll be able to see both of those in one place. Your to-do list is specific to your user, your staff member, so it's going to show them everything that they have on their plate. Now, what we're going to do now is take a step back here and look at this manager. And a few other icons over here on the left that I want to showcase in the last few minutes is this notification option. These are just a few that can be toggled on and off, but it's very easy to automate all of those notifications that go out at each one of those stages. So you simply flag these on, and then once one of those rules are triggered, it's going to shoot off an email, so you always have that communication happening live. So now let's go to one last, and one of my favorite tools is called the Status Tracker. So if we click on this, what we have in here is the ability for the manager to keep track of how far along their process is. If the process is a month, 2 months long, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of staff to keep an eye on to make sure that we don't fall behind. This is giving you that high-level manager view of the status of your workflow. In the upper left, you can see 14% of my tasks have been submitted. 14% have not been reached. There's something that needs to happen first. There's been 57 that have been started, and then there's 14% that got approved. And you can see over here it tells you how far along you are from a percentage standpoint. It also gives you an idea of how many days you have left. In this case, we want to be done by the end of July, so we have 42 days. And if, let's say this number should always be 0, but if there was any tasks that are overdue, you have visibility right here into what those tasks are. And then down here, it's breaking out all of those different individual tasks by what the task is, who the owner is of that task, and the status. You can see if it's not yet reached. In this case, this was approved already by the manager user. You can see here some things were submitted. So you have visibility exactly to what the status is on a per task basis. Now, I know we have about a minute left, so I want to take a quick peek at this monthly close process. This is just another example of another workflow that could be set up within the system. So you have a tremendous amount of flexibility when it comes to what you're tracking. In this case, this is going to include a lot of other functions that are outside of Vena, that are beyond budgeting within the system, that you're able to track within here. You can set up your reports and account analysis so that it all feeds in from your GL system as well. So you can get very creative with the workflow tool to use it for many things. I've seen it used for grant proposals as well, if you want to streamline that. Some project management could also be, you can leverage this tool. And again, this has the status tracker, so if I click on this, you'll see that this is another view of it. We have quite a few more tasks going on. And if at any point you want to click on, let's say, this here, you can see it isolates what specifically is past due. So it's also interactive where you can click through and isolate where things are in the process. And if at any point I wanted to click on one of those dates that I know something is due, it would then take me specifically to that. So you can use the calendar view as well. Yep. So I know that we're just about at 2:30, and I've covered everything that I want to make sure I got through. Kim, did there happen to be any questions that I can run through quickly?
Just one question came through, which is, are you able to have more than one workflow running at one time?
Yes. You can have as many as you'd like running simultaneously. In addition to having them run simultaneously, you can also reuse them. So if you have, let's say, month-end close, you don't want to build that every month. You just simply hit the reset button, update the date so that it moves out a month, and then you can use that again. So it's very flexible as far as not having you manually create these each time you need to use it.
Great, thank you. Do you want to give it 30 seconds or so and see if any questions come through?
Yep, that sounds good.
Okay. There's a Q&A tab at the bottom. If you have any last-minute questions for Zachary, you can use that button to submit them. Okay. Anonymous says, can you share this recording so I can share with my team? And yes, we will email you within 24 hours a recording of this presentation and the slide deck as well. Okay, Zachary, a question for you. Can you run reports of the dashboard?
Yes, you'd be able to, all those operational reports, that section, under the contributor view, you can run those dashboards or reports anytime that you need them within the system. I won't be able to go into them and showcase them on today's webinar, but that's definitely something we can follow up on and then either send a recording or go through that separately.
Perfect. Okay, that looks like all the questions we have for you today, Zachary, so we can wrap this up now if you have any final words for everyone.
Perfect. All right, well, thank you everybody for joining. I really appreciate it. Like I said, if anything else comes to mind, either questions that weren't thought of through this, feel free to reach out to anybody, essentially, at JMT Consulting. We'll make sure to get back to you.
Yep, thank you. Thank you all for joining us, and we'd love for you to join us at future webinars. You can find more details on those and register by visiting our website, jmtconsulting.com, and clicking on the Training Events tab. So thank you all again, and have a great day.